Hello and welcome to the Memory Card. On the last episode, I did say that I was going to focus on something a bit more modern, and well, this is about as modern as it gets, really. I'm going to be talking about God of War for the PlayStation 4, but considering that this is pretty close to the release of the game, and that the plot and the environments and all that are very integral to your experience with the game, I'm going to only really show footage of the first about hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes or so of the game. And I'm not going to go into very many details at all of the story, just more general kind of things, just to get across my feelings on the game. And if you haven't played the game yet, I'm just going to say right now, if you have a PlayStation 4, you should get this game. And if you don't have a PlayStation 4 yet, for some reason, this is definitely a very good reason to pick one up. But anyway, let's get on with the review. Considering that God of War isn't a very, very recent release from a first-party Sony studio, Sony Santa Monica, the game graphically and just general presentation-wise is fantastic, as you'd expect from a Sony first-party game. But it's not just impressive just in the general fidelity of the textures and character models and lighting and all that, and also its art style, in that it's able to blend elements of the art style of the previous God of War games with some new flavors, considering that the setting is drastically different. It's a bit more of a Norse setting than the Greek settings of the prior games. And not only does that add a new lease of life to the game, just from a plot standpoint and setting and all that, but also the different things they can do visually. It's definitely nice. The environments in this game are all very impressive. There's a lot of moments in this game that just visually, from the vistas and all that, just were huge wow moments for me. And thankfully, this game also does a really great job with colors. It's not super muted or anything like that, which they could have done to go with the general mood and tone of the story, but there's a lot of great contrast. Some areas are a bit more bleak and some are more bright and vibrant, and I really liked the variety in that. And also, as you'd expect from the God of War games, there's a lot of really cool designs with the different creatures and other characters that you run into, alongside the great environmental design. And one thing that is really great is that there's even more variety in the enemies that you fight than that there was in the prior God of War games, which is something I definitely liked. But not only is the setting drastically different, but the gameplay itself is also a huge departure from the prior God of War games. The previous God of War games, if you ever played them or didn't play them, they're basically hack and slash spectacle fighters like Bayonetta and Devil May Cry, but this time around the camera is over the shoulder, kind of like The Last of Us, but the combat is a lot more fast-paced and has a great sense of weight to it. It's very satisfying, and which is definitely a huge contrast from the prior God of War games, because those were a lot faster and a bit more focused on the big flashy moves, but here, all the moves are really weighty, and one of the most satisfying aspects of the combat is the ability to throw and recall your axe. And just whenever you can see all the different ways that you can use the axe within combat, and also just in the general environments in the game as well, is really fun, and it never stops being fun. It's kind of how I expect the combat to be, in a general sense, if there was a really good third-person Thor game nowadays, with the way you can throw and recall your axe. And also, the kid that you're traveling with, Atreus, he actually is an enhancement to the combat and not a detractor like I thought he could be based off of the initial trailer I saw at E3 last year. It's just more of sending some shots from his bow at certain enemies at your discretion, or calling out whenever someone's going to try and attack you from behind. You might not see him, which helps alongside the little danger indicator around Kratos that points in the direction of someone that's about to attack you. All that really helps with the combat to make it really, really fun, which helps considering you're going to do a lot of fighting in this game, even though it is still very cinematic and story-focused, which is fairly commonplace with the first-party Sony exclusives like Uncharted 4 and Horizon Zero Dawn, but one thing that's really cool with the story and cutscenes in God of War is that you can almost... It's pretty seamless, the transition between gameplay and cutscene, because it's all in-engine, and there's no camera cuts or anything like that. It just seamlessly transitions into a cutscene. You just notice that the direction you point in doesn't really matter because you're in the cutscene. And also, there are puzzles in this game, which there were some puzzles in the previous God of War games, but they're a little more challenging in this game. They might stump you for a little bit, but it's nothing that's going to be a huge barrier for people. And also, with the general design of this game, it somewhat reminds me of the reboot Tomb Raider games, where it's but with more linearity, because there is a general through line of the plot. But you are able to go along to different side quests and find different collectibles and hidden treasures and that kind of thing. But there is a general storyline that you're going to be following, and it's not a huge open world like Breath of the Wild or The Witcher 3. It's more like wide corridors with open areas to explore in between those corridors. And there's really cool ways that the game handles things like fast travel that all feels grounded in the lore of the game, which is a really cool touch. And story-wise, this game is really fantastic. It's one of the best I've experienced so far this year, which I wasn't expecting going in because I've never thought the story was very good in any of the God of War games, and I always thought Kratos was a really unlikable, unenjoyable, one-dimensional, I'm just angry all the time character, but they actually managed to still keep Kratos true to the character that he was in the prior games, but flesh him out and expand him dramatically to the point where he's actually a character you can really care about and feel some empathy and sympathy for, and actually want to see where his journey takes him throughout this game. They made him extremely compelling, and also the kid as well, Atreus, which, again, whenever I saw the original E3 trailer, I figured that he might just be an annoying drag on the story and gameplay, but he really added to the experience in the same kind of way that Ellie from The Last of Us did. And the general tone of the story is also still somewhat in keeping with the prior God of War games, but there's a lot more depth to it. And also there are still moments of levity and some humanization of Kratos and Atreus and the other characters that make up the world. It's really nice for actually see Kratos interact with other people without just immediately ripping their heads off. I can definitely say that God of War so far has been the biggest surprise for me this year, because I picked up this game day one. I was interested in God of War from things that I heard and saw, but I wasn't expecting it to be just as fantastic as it is. For a lot of people, they're saying that it's like they're shoo-in for Game of the Year, or that it's the best first-party exclusive for the PlayStation 4 so far, and I can definitely see where they're coming from with this. God of War is definitely on my short list for Game of the Year already, and it's not very far into the year. And also that I can definitely say that if it isn't my favorite exclusive on the PlayStation 4, it's at the very least very high on that list. This is a must-play game this year, whether you're going to borrow it from a friend, download it, or buy it physical. Whatever you do, just play this game, because it is absolutely worth your time. I can't really recommend this game highly enough. But regardless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on the memory card.